The US presidential elections are special for many reasons. Growing up in Europe, it is one of the only elections of the leader of another country that you actually care about. Of course, growing up in Germany, you hear about what was elected in France or Great Britain, but you never really follow the process quite the same way as we do with the US. This phenomena is very present throughout Europe, as the US is such an important economic as well as political partner for us. Who the citizens of the United States choose as their leader has huge impacts on many aspects of the lives of Europeans as well. For example, the trade war that occurred with Trump, him threatening to leave NATO, or Biden's hasty withdrawal from Afghanistan, which forced European troops to withdraw from the country as well. Seeing as the next election will take place on the 5th of November 2024, we really only have about a year of peace and quiet before the primaries and caucuses begin. This too is special about the American election. It is a very long process until the candidates of each party stand and the actual presidential campaigning begins. And this is exactly the part we will be looking at today, the campaigning to become a president, and more specifically, the funds for it and the question if the size of the campaign funds determines who will win. Does money matter when it comes to the US presidential elections? Before jumping in, let me welcome you to our channel, Rebel Economics. We're excited to have you here today and talk about all the ins and outs of the American election funding. If you enjoy our content, please like and subscribe. Your support is so important to us. First, let's take a look at how campaign funding even works. It is a bit of a rough topic, so bear with me. Candidates for political office have to raise their own money to fund their campaigns. The logic behind this rule is that it demonstrates a wide support, so not everyone will just run willy-nilly. Instead, it is only people who can get cash from others to actually undertake the campaign. And most of the time, it is not individual people who are the most important cash cows, but rather companies will be really interested to get their foot in the door with the potential next president. That is why there are campaign finance laws. They dictate who can contribute to a campaign, how much they can contribute, and how those contributions must be reported. This varies at the state and federal levels, but in general, campaigns may raise funds from individuals, political party committees, and political action committees, so-called PACs. These last ones are some of the most important sources of campaign funding. According to the rules, corporations are not allowed to be official contributors to a campaign fund, while at the same time being some of the economic actors most interested in influencing the outcome of a campaign by funding it and getting a good standing with the president-to-be. So corporations, labor organizations, and membership groups who cannot contribute directly to federal campaigns organize themselves as these political action committees, PACs, in order to be able to fund one or both sides. These committees solicit donations from members and associates, so corporations and other groups priorly excluded to support the campaign. These too are subject to federal limits. This is why super PACs have been created. They are not subject to federal limits, however, they cannot directly contribute to or coordinate with campaigns and candidates, which is something that normal PACs can do. This was made possible through a 2010 Citizen United ruling of the Supreme Court that decided that restrictions on independent campaign spending by corporations and labor unions were unconstitutional due to the restriction on free speech. So these super PACs raise funds to run their own campaigns independently of the candidates.
On the official Jeb signs, you'll see J lowercase e lowercase b. But not to be confused with this, which has nothing to do with Jeb Bush for president.
They're subject to fewer regulations due to the constitutional protection of free speech. A further issue with these super PACs is that they are often able to raise money from anonymous sources due to legal loopholes, and are permitted to receive unlimited donations from corporate and union sources. Since the 2010 Citizen United ruling, independent spendings on elections have skyrocketed, making up an increasingly important aspect of campaigning. So in the US, there's a clear focus on receiving private donations over public funds. Public funds are derived from tax returns filled out by the citizens, who can choose if they want to make a $3 donation to the presidential election campaign fund. However, if a candidate wants to receive money from this fund, he or she has to agree to not take any private donations in return. The disparity between the amount leads to many presidential candidates choosing to not use any public funds for their campaigns. Over the last 2 decades, the spending for campaigns has increased tremendously, not just in the presidential elections, but also for congressional ones. The 2020 elections knocked this out of the park by being by far the most expensive election for the congressional and presidential races. But does this really matter for the outcome of the election? Does it matter which candidate is spending more money on the election campaign? Let's have a look at the elections of the past 40 years. Out of 11 elections since the 1980s, a total of 6 elections have been won by the biggest spender, namely 1980 by Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush in 1988, Bill Clinton in 1992, George W. Bush in 2000, Barack Obama in 2008, and lastly, Joe Biden in 2020. So, not really a compelling argument that spending immense amounts of money on a campaign is worth it. But in some years, the candidates actually spent a similar amount. For example, in 1988, when George H.W. Bush and Michael S. Dukakis were running against one another. The difference in spending there is only $19 million, though Bush did win being the largest spender. However, when compared to the year with the largest difference, which is McCain versus Obama in 2008, the difference in spending was a whopping $561 million in Obama's favor. So, based on this, let's look at the 3 biggest spending gaps since 1980 and see who won. We already know the first place is Obama spending more and winning. The second biggest spending difference is George W. Bush versus Al Gore in 2000, with Bush being the bigger spender and the winner of the election, just 1 election cycle later, as Bush was defending his seat in the Oval Office against Kerry. With a spending gap of $184 million, so half of that of the first Obama campaign, Bush managed to get re-elected. This does hint to the fact that having a big flashy campaign really does help your chances of being elected, assuming you spend significantly more in comparison to your opponent. If the difference in spending is not large enough, it does give your opponent a chance to win the election even when comparatively spending less than you. So in the case of the American presidential elections, the saying "go big or go home" really does ring true. Of course, there are many other factors which flow into the decision of who people vote for, as well as the entire system of the American Electoral College. So I'm by far not saying that spending is the only factor to look at, but it certainly is an important one. And it will continue to be so in the coming elections, as since 2010, super PACs can individually support election campaigns without there being any limits on their spendings. This has the chance to further increase the difference in funding for the presidential campaign, and as we have seen in today's video, really influence the outcome of the election. So it certainly remains interesting to keep an eye out for that in the coming US election in 2024. Thank you so much for watching Rebel Economics. As always, we appreciate you watching our videos and supporting us. So if you enjoyed today's video, please like and subscribe to our channel. We have plenty more content about economics, business, finance, and political economy on our channel, so why not check out some more right now? Thanks for watching and see you soon here on Rebel Economics.